Aloha and welcome to Focus on Finnegan. Today we have a very special group of people, a family here with us today. We're going to be talking about domestic violence, but also something that is very important that initially I didn't know was that big of an issue, and that's teen dating violence and how we can prevent domestic violence from happening by doing prevention measures at a very early stage. And we're going to walk through Royal Kaukani's just recent passing in a domestic violence case. We also have with me my colleague, to my right, is Representative John Mizuno, and he's been an advocate for just wanting to see a reform of our system to allow for these types of domestic violence cases to basically go away and save lives. So today we have, to my right, this is Representative John Mizuno, and our family here that I know that you guys have been through quite a lot this past week, so we want to thank you for being with us. We have Nadine and Sister Esther. We also have Marcy and Ua and Kapua, who are Royal's cousins, and then 3 sisters here. So thank you again for joining us. What we kind of want to do in this show is just put a face on domestic violence, and maybe bring up some of the issues that have come up along through your lives. What was it like having a sister that was, you know, in a situation like this? It must have been very difficult. So I guess my first question was, who is Royal? What is Royal? Who is Royal?
You want to answer that? You can. Royal Kaukani was a sister, a best friend, a volleyball coach, a great auntie. She was just an all-around wonderful person.
Special person.
Yeah. She always, in any little way, she would touch somebody's lives just by meeting or helping. That's what she would do. She would try to help anybody she could.
And I'm, you know, as represented in the 5 of you, and the stories that Esther has told me before, close family. Tell me about your family.
We're children of domestic violence. You know, my mom and dad have been like that for our whole life. And my dad left the islands, in 97. And he left, and he left my mom to take care of my sisters, but my mom was an alcoholic for our whole life too. So when my dad left, my husband and I took over taking care of my sisters. My dad went to move to the mainland to live with Marcy, and so I had the rest of the sisters home, and so we stepped in and took over the role to take care of them. But even though we did, they still had that background of domestic abuse, you know, and that's how we grew up. And just knowing how our background was made us such a stronger group, because that's all we had to fall back on was just sisters. And everything from growing up, high school, periods, boys, making sure that their education was number one. That was just always a hard struggle, you know, for all of us to go through. We did it as a team. We did it, like, this was no choice. We did it all together. She flew home and helped. When she came home, she had to just, this is your role, you know. I'm mom and you're dad, or you're mom and I'm dad. And so it's always been that way, just always the sisters and my husband. That's always how it's been. And
so you 2 are the oldest?
We're the oldest out of 7.
Okay.
I can honestly say, I think, yeah, the abuse that we actually saw stopped when my sister stepped in and actually raised us from then on out, yeah, because up until the day my dad left, in fact, that was the main reason why he left, was because, you know, he couldn't handle it anymore, and it was just kind of tearing. Yeah, he didn't want to do it anymore. He didn't want to.
He gave up.
Hit, beat, take care of. Yeah, he just gave up, walked away, and so that was the moment where the defining moment where it stopped, pretty much, the abuse. Yeah, because once my sister and her husband took care of us, they made sure we had everything. Like, my sister worked several jobs. Her husband worked several jobs. They did everything they could to make sure that we had what we didn't have when, you know, when my mom and dad were here. My mom and dad, they provided the necessary means, you know. But for like nurturing and academically, sports-wise, that was all my sister and her husband doing. Yeah. So they pretty much instilled all those values in us.
I had a question, Nadine and Esther. Was domestic violence when you were growing up acceptable, or did it seem like it might have been?
It was routine.
Normal.
It was routine. Yeah, it was normal.
Routine. It was normal.
It was something we seen. You know, drink, argue, fight, beat each other up. My mom stay in the room, my dad stay in his, and that was just something. You know,
or
the
sometimes
sisters.
ambulance get called.
Yeah.
And they would still get back together.
And they would end up back together.
And so did the family think this was actually, this was
acceptable.
Part of family growing up?
That was
this
part
was
of growing up and love, that tough love, you know. We were like, wow, that's what you're supposed to do. Well, you fight and then you make up and get back.
Yep.
So was it, did you, if I recall correctly, you said the defining moment was when your dad left the state, and then Esther took over with her husband, and you kind of set parameters and explained to the other sisters, this is acceptable, maybe this is not. Was that when it started?
Well, once my dad left and we took over, we became role models. Kili and I, my husband and I, we've become the role models, the acceptable role models, you know, where you don't see us beating up each other, because I wasn't going to take that kind of stuff. You know, we don't drink. I don't smoke. We don't smoke. So
it was a big kind of change for us, like, whoa, all this beating and drinking to, this is how it's supposed to be.
It's a family. We were more family orientated with involving with kids. It was a different environment from what my parents provided for Marcy and I. We had a lot of the hard parts when we were growing up, and then it kind of trickled down to them. So by the time my dad left, it instilled already in their head of how this is good, you know. Oh, we're having a good day. But when dad gets mad, oh, we got to be quiet, you know, because that's going to be okay later on. And so, you know, you let them get mad, do whatever, and then you, oh, we're good now, you know, everything is all okay. And then that's all they knew. So for my sisters, it's hard for them to know what wasn't right and what was right. And even though my husband and I never did do the domestic violence thing, I think it was still embedded in them already of, you know, my parents still did this. It was, this is the way to go.
Now, one of the things that we're pushing here in the legislature is a resolution that talks about teen dating violence. I know it's a little bit of a different situation from yours, but what this particular resolution does is it says, let's have some education within, you know, middle schools and high schools to teach young kids what is love, you know, and that love is not abuse. So in a situation where, you know, you're growing up in the home and maybe there's some domestic violence in there, that they can separate what is happening in my household, even though there is love between the two people, that doesn't necessarily mean that that is good, healthy love.